representing them. And as you know, Phil represented Paulding County for, I think, 10 years. So over the time, he has gotten to know a lot of you, made great friends, and we're so appreciative of Paulding County. It's been a wonderful place for us. And at the same time, I want to tell you that we're not going to take any votes in Paulding County for granted. We feel like we still have to earn them and ask for your support and be worthy of it. And as I told Sharon earlier, I usually will tell a little bit of more of the story about how Phil and I grew up, etc., and the real story behind our lives. And even though I know that you know him very well, if you've heard him speak, then you haven't particularly heard the things that I might say today, because they're not things that you might hear from him. So I would just like to give you a little personal background about how we got here into this area, etc. As Sharon said, I am a Georgia native from Newnan, Georgia, and I am a graduate of LaGrange College. And Phil grew up in Augusta and went to Georgia Tech. And many of you may know some of these facts, but some of you may not have heard these before. When Phil decided that he wanted to go to Georgia Tech, he had no money to go, absolutely none. So he worked a construction job in the summer. And so that summer, he made enough money to go to Tech for 1 quarter. So if you can imagine somebody like today or going to school and having the money to go 1 quarter, that's a real challenge and not a good way to start. But that was his situation. He wanted to go really bad, and that's all he had. So when Phil got to Tech, he really immediately started trying to get on the co-op program, which was not always that easy. I think it's changed a lot today. The co-op programs today, I know at Tech, you can live on campus, you can continue your social life and go back and forth to your jobs, which are, I think most of them are in Atlanta. But at that point, they got him a job at the very last minute, right before the quarter ended. He was thrilled to get it, and he went to a paper mill in Canton, North Carolina, and lived in a boarding house. He had no car. His dad drove him up there, left him in a boarding house, and he walked back and forth to work. But he knew that that gave him the opportunity to continue at Tech. So the entire time that Phil was at Tech, he was a co-op student. After he left that job, he was lucky enough to get a job at the Savannah River plant, which was much more convenient for Phil because he was from Augusta and he was able to live at home. When he finished Tech, he had become interested in medicine. So he applied to medical school in Augusta at Medical College of Georgia and was accepted there. And the easy part is that he had a place to live because his parents lived there. And all he had to do was come up with the money to go to medical school, which he borrowed. And the interesting fact about when he was living at home, it wasn't your normal situation because his folks were, they were struggling along, and so his father had built a motel, a mom and pop single motel in Augusta, and because they had put their money into that, they didn't have a real home. So the whole time that Phil was in medical school, he lived in one of the rooms at the motel. That was where he lived. His parents lived in another room. So, and he tells a story about how you've been in these motels and you're sitting there and you've got the mirrors, and, and you're looking into the mirrors. So he tells a story that he taped newspapers all over the mirrors so that he wouldn't be looking at himself and so that he could study. He's always come up with a lot of bright ideas like that. So when Phil finished his medical training, medical school, he was looking for an internship, and he looked at a lot of different cities. His brother lived in Atlanta. He was close to his brother. He has two. One lives in Atlanta, one lives near Augusta. So he decided he would come to Grady. And I had, in the meantime, moved to Atlanta, and as Sharon said, I had become a Delta flight attendant. So the story is I was living in the same apartment complex as Phil's brother. And so when Phil came to visit his brother, they were going to live together, but not in that apartment because his brother had other roommates and they were going to move, but Phil came to visit the apartment complex, and his brother introduced me to him at that time. And Phil tells everybody, he says, you know, that was like my first day that I got to Atlanta. And so we didn't get to see each other an awful lot because back then interns worked very long shifts, and then I was flying as a flight attendant. But we dated the whole time that he was an intern. And as soon as he finished his internship, then we were married, and that's 43 years ago. So he wanted to, he had become interested in the OBGYN while he was doing his medical training, and he was an intern at Grady. He had decided he really wanted to do a residency in OBGYN because that's what he enjoyed the most. So he had decided to do that. And we had decided to move. And at the very last minute, he called me and he said, you know, I can't do this. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, I cannot go through a 3-year residency program and owe the money that I owe for medical school. So I want to go into a family practice, pay off that loan before I go on to OB training. So he wanted to do that. We said, okay, we'll do that. And I thought at the time in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, well, this is never going to happen. Once he gets settled in a practice, gets patients, and we're living in a community, then he is going to stay there, and that's fine. You know, I thought, and it was going very well. Actually, he was very, very busy, had built up a good practice, and at the time, it took 2 years. When he paid off the loans, he said, okay, that is it. I'm calling the Medical College of Georgia, and I'm going to do my OB/GYN residency because that is what I love to do. I love to deliver the babies. And he said, that's what I want to do. So we packed up and moved to the Medical College of Georgia, and he did a 3-year residency there. When we were through with the residency, I think by then we had maybe 3 children. And we looked all over the whole Southeast for a practice and where we might want to live and raise our family. And we chose Cobb County. And that was, I believe we came to Cobb County in like 1975. And Phil proceeded to start a practice here. He joined a group. He joined a group of 2 other men and practiced medicine here actively for 26 years. So now, if you've been to the debates or you've heard any of this, of accusations or whatever, I think that one of the big ones is that some of them, including Phil, are career politicians. So my thought is that if somebody spent 4 years in medical school, a year of internship, 2 years of family practice, 3 years of a residency, and 26 years in the practice of medicine, I don't know how they can call him a career politician. I think he's a career physician. And our kids think that because when they call him, they're not calling him to ask about Washington. They're calling him to say, Dad, I've got the flu. You got to do something. I need some medicine or something. And the people out and about that we see in restaurants and in church and all, they don't say, Congressman, how are things in Washington? They say, Dr. Gingrey, you delivered our baby. And I don't think any of us ever forget who delivered our babies. So I think that Phil's medical background, all these years that he has practiced medicine, makes him particularly the choice for this election because it is so about Obamacare. And he understands it and has fought against it for a long time. He understands it, I think, maybe more than most of us do because of his medical training, his medical background, and the effect that it is having on doctors and their patients, and the hospitals and everything that's involved. And if you can't fix Obamacare, then there are a lot of the economy and everything else that's going to be affected by that. So I think that he is an expert on Obamacare. He also, during his time in medical practice, he decided he wanted to serve on the school board. And that was Phil's main focus when he was entering politics. He never thought past the school board. He thought that was something he had a gift for. He loved education. He wanted to make a difference. And so that was his only thought at that time, was to run for the school board. And he was chairman of the 3 years out of the 4 that he was on the school board, and he thoroughly enjoyed that. He thought he made a big difference, and it was very rewarding to him to be on the school board. Well, about the time that he was finishing his 2nd term, Chuck Clay ran for lieutenant governor, and that opened up a state senate seat. And a lot of people thought, well, Phil's done such a great job on the school board, we think he would be a natural for this state senate seat. So with a lot of prompting from his family and neighbors, he decided, okay, well, I will try this. And he was elected and served 2 terms in the state senate. And then the congressional seat came open. I believe the situation, as most of you in this room would remember, that Bob Barr was a congressman from this, that represented most of this area, and they have redrawn, the Democrats have redrawn the lines, and they had made it a very meandered district that leaned Democrat, so it was very hard for a Republican to win the seat. It definitely was drawn for a Democrat, and it was actually drawn for Roger Kahn, is who it was drawn for, because he had become really, really good friends with Tom Murphy. And so it was actually drawn for him, although a lot of people around our area thought it was drawn for Buddy Darden. It was really drawn for Roger Kahn. So, you know, we looked at the district, and it was Democrat, but Phil said, you know, I think I can do well in that district. So we campaigned really, really hard. It was a very hard primary. There was a runoff in the primary. There were originally, I think, 3. There was a runoff. And then in the general election, it was very, very tough. And we won by like a whopping 50.4%. So it was a very close election, and very, very exciting election. And we, like I say, Phil worked very hard. As all of you know, he works extremely hard. He's a very dedicated person to his district and to his friends and supporters. So I think that also, you know, if we're thinking about his experience on Obamacare, the education, and his experience in the General Assembly and in the House of Representatives, I think he has all the qualifications that are needed to have a strong, conservative Republican voice represent our Georgia in the U.S. Senate. So, as I say, we're not going to take anybody's votes for granted, because we think we ought to earn them. And hopefully, when, you know, I think we all have strong voices, and when you go out and you talk to your friends, your neighbors, your relatives, that you have a tremendous influence on them, because they know you're here, you're in the know. You understand what's going on, and you've met probably all the candidates, and you can influence people. And that is how we're going to win, it's our base. And that we are able to get our own base out to vote. And I think the Republicans really have to be motivated to bring their people out. You know, the areas are changing. There are more people being brought into the party all over the state. So I think that it is, like I say, get your base out, get your supporters out, and we appreciate any of you who will support us and help us to get Phil elected to the United States Senate. Well, I enjoyed being with you today, and I'll be here. So if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask me about anything going on, I'd be more than happy to answer them.